What happens when Hollywood's most beloved late-night host decides he's had enough of carefully crafted royal narratives and decides to ask the questions everyone's been thinking but nobody dares to voice? What happens when America's sweetheart Duchess finds herself face-to-face with a comedian who's built his career on exposing uncomfortable truths? Tonight we witnessed television history in the making. A moment so raw and unfiltered that it left viewers across the nation speechless. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation that had social media erupting within minutes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds next. The studio lights gleam brighter than usual as Jimmy Kimmel adjusts his tie. That familiar mischievous glint already dancing in his eyes. The audience buzzes with anticipation, completely unaware they're about to witness one of the most uncomfortable celebrity interviews in late-night television history. Meghan Markle enters the stage with her signature grace, waving to the crowd with that practiced smile we've all come to recognize. Her designer dress catching the studio lights perfectly as she settles into the guest chair. "Meghan, welcome back to the show," Jimmy begins, his voice carrying that deceptively casual tone that regular viewers know means trouble. "You look absolutely radiant as always." "Thank you, Jimmy. It's wonderful to be here," Meghan responds, her voice smooth and controlled, though there's something in her posture that suggests she's already on high alert. "Now, I have to ask," Jimmy continues, leaning forward slightly. "Because our viewers are curious people, and curiosity is what makes good television. You've been very vocal about your struggles with the British press, very open about feeling unprotected by the royal institution, but I'm wondering, and forgive me if this sounds direct, when exactly did you realize that marrying into the royal family wasn't going to be the fairy tale you might have expected?" The question hangs in the air like smoke, and for just a moment, Meghan's composure flickers. The studio audience shifts uncomfortably, sensing the sudden tension that's crackling between host and guest. "I think that's a very loaded question, Jimmy," Meghan replies, her media training kicking in as she attempts to deflect with a laugh that doesn't quite reach her eyes. "I never expected a fairy tale. I've always been a realist." "A realist," Jimmy repeats, nodding slowly. "That's interesting because from the outside it looked like you had some pretty specific expectations. The wedding alone cost British taxpayers millions. There were demands about which tiara to wear. Complaints about the smell of the chapel for a realist. Those seemed like some pretty princess-like concerns." The audience goes dead silent. This isn't the usual softball celebrity interview they're accustomed to seeing. Meghan's smile becomes more strained, her hands clasping together tightly in her lap. "I think there's been a lot of misinformation about those details," she says. Carefully, "The media has a way of twisting things." "The media?" Jimmy echoes, his tone growing sharper. "Right, because the media is the villain in this story. But here's what I find fascinating. Meghan, you've made a career out of using the media when it serves your purpose. Netflix deals, Spotify contracts, Oprah interviews, magazine covers. You're not exactly camera shy. So, when you say the media is the problem, what you really mean is that you want to control the narrative completely, don't you?" The question lands like a physical blow. Meghan's carefully constructed facade begins to crack, her breathing becoming slightly more rapid as she struggles to maintain her composure. "That's not fair, Jimmy. Every public figure tries to tell their own story. That's not manipulation. That's self-preservation." "Self-preservation," Jimmy muses, tapping his fingers on his desk. "Interesting choice of words, because from where I'm standing, it looks more like self-promotion. You left the royal family claiming you wanted privacy, but you've been anything but private. You've been more visible since leaving than you ever were as a working royal. So, which is it? Did you want privacy, or did you just want to be famous on your own terms?" The studio is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Meghan's face flushes, and for the first time since the interview began, her voice wavers slightly. "You're twisting my words and my intentions. Harry and I left because we were being treated unfairly. Because there was a double standard in how we were covered versus other members of the family." "Double standard," Jimmy repeats, leaning back in his chair with a knowing look. "You mean like how other royals don't get Netflix deals worth hundreds of millions? How they don't get to pick and choose which royal duties they want to fulfill while keeping their titles? How they don't get to make explosive accusations on international television without providing proof. That kind of double standard. Meghan's composure is visibly cracking now. Her voice rises slightly, tinged with frustration and something that sounds dangerously close to panic. You're being incredibly unfair right now, Jimmy. You're attacking me based on tabloid narratives and speculation. I'm asking questions, Jimmy replies calmly, his voice steady and measured in contrast to her growing agitation. Questions that millions of people have been asking, but nobody in your carefully curated media appearances has had the courage to voice. Questions about accountability, about consistency, about the gap between what you say and what you do. The tension in the studio is palpable now. The audience watching this unprecedented moment unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. Meghan's hands are trembling slightly, though she's trying desperately to hide it. I came here tonight expecting a normal interview, not an ambush, she says, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. This isn't an ambush, Meghan. This is journalism. This is what hardens when someone finally asks you the hard questions. Instead of lobbing you softballs and letting you control the entire conversation, Jimmy leans forward, his expression growing more serious as he watches Meghan's facade continue to crumble before millions of viewers. Hard questions, he repeats, his voice taking on an edge that cuts through the studio's tense atmosphere, like why you felt comfortable making accusations of racism against the royal family without naming names or providing specifics. You dropped that bombshell on Oprah, watched the world explode with outrage, and then retreated behind vague statements about concerns and conversations. That's not truth-telling, Meghan. That's character assassination with plausible deniability. Meghan's face goes pale, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the fact that she's visibly shaken. Her voice, when she finally speaks, is barely above a whisper. Those conversations happened to Jimmy. Just because I chose not to destroy individuals doesn't mean I was lying, but you were willing to destroy the institution. Jimmy fires back without missing a beat. You were perfectly comfortable letting the entire royal family, an institution that's existed for over 1,000 years, be painted as racist based on your interpretation of private conversations that nobody else can verify. You wanted all the impact of the accusation without any of the responsibility that comes with making specific claims. The audience watches in stunned silence as tears begin to well up in Meghan's eyes. Her hands shake as she reaches for the water glass on the table beside her chair. You don't understand what it was like, she says, her voice breaking slightly. You don't know what it feels like to be isolated, to feel like you're drowning while everyone around you pretends everything is fine. I'm sure it was difficult, Jimmy acknowledges, though his tone remains unforgiving. But difficulty doesn't justify dishonesty. And here's what I really don't understand. What millions of people don't understand. You knew what you were marrying into. The royal family isn't a secret organization. Their protocols, their traditions, their way of life. It's all been documented for centuries. You had access to the best advisors, the most experienced staff, people who could have prepared you for everything. But instead of adapting, instead of learning, you decided the entire institution needed to change to accommodate you. Meghan's composure completely shatters. A single tear rolls down her cheek as her voice becomes shaky and defensive. I tried to adapt. I tried to follow their rules, their protocols, but nothing I did was ever good enough. Every decision I made was criticized. Every outfit was wrong. Every public appearance was somehow inappropriate. Really? Jimmy's eyebrows raised skeptically. Because the criticism, I remember, wasn't about following protocols. It was about breaking them. The secret baby shower in New York with private jets and celebrities. The unauthorized biographers that just happened to paint you in a glowing light while throwing everyone else under the bus. The constant leaks to friendly journalists. The lawsuits against newspapers for publishing your own father's letter. You weren't being criticized for following the rules, Meghan. You were being criticized for thinking the rules didn't apply to you. The tears are flowing freely now, and Meghan's voice cracks as she tries to defend herself. My father betrayed me. He sold stories about me to the press, staged photographs, lied about our relationship. I had every right to protect myself. Your father, Jimmy says, his voice growing colder. Who raised you as a single parent when your mother wasn't around? Who worked in television lighting for decades to support your dreams of becoming an actress? Who walked you down the aisle at your first wedding? That father, the one you completely cut out of your life the moment he became inconvenient to your royal narrative. This hits harder than anything else Jimmy has said. Meghan's face crumples and she covers her mouth with her hand as a soba escapes. He hurt me, she whispers. He chose money over his own daughter. He made mistakes, Jimmy concedes, but his tone remains relentless. Desperate, lonely mistakes made by a man who was suddenly thrust into a media circus he never asked for. But you made a choice, too, didn't you? You chose to abandon him completely rather than help him navigate a situation that was just as overwhelming for him as it was for you. You chose to let him find out about your wedding date from the tabloids. You chose to let him have a heart attack alone while you were planning a fairy tale wedding. Where was your compassion then? Meghan is crying openly now, her shoulders shaking as she struggles to speak through her tears. I couldn't trust him anymore. He kept talking to the press, kept making things worse. So, you decided to make them worse yourself. Jimmy's voice rises slightly, his frustration evident. You decided that instead of dealing with your family privately, you'd air all your grievances on international television. You'd write tell-all books and give explosive interviews. How is that any different from what you're accusing your father of doing? The hypocrisy hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. Meghan wipes her eyes with the back of her hand, her mascara smudging as she tries desperately to regain some semblance of control. It's different because I was trying to tell the truth about what really happened. Your version of the truth, Jimmy corrects sharply. Your carefully crafted, professionally produced, strategically timed version of the truth. The version that makes you the victim in every single story. The version that paints everyone else as villains while you remain blameless. That's not truth-telling, Meghan. That's propaganda. The word hits like a slap. Meghan recoils as if she's been physically struck, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. That's not fair. I never claimed to be perfect. No, but you've claimed to be the victim in every situation. Your family, your in-laws, the press, the public, even your own staff. According to your narrative, everyone else is the problem. Everyone else is racist or jealous or manipulative or unkind. Don't you think there's a pattern there? Don't you think maybe, just maybe, the common denominator in all these conflicts might be you? The question hangs in the studio air like a death sentence. Meghan's face goes completely white, her breathing becoming erratic as Jimmy's words penetrate her last remaining defenses. The tears are streaming down her face now, creating dark streaks through her foundation as she struggles to form coherent words. I'm not the problem, she whispers, but even she doesn't sound convinced anymore. I was trying to survive in an impossible situation. Survive. Jimmy's voice drips with incredulity. You were living in palaces, wearing designer gowns, traveling the world on the taxpayers' dime, and being celebrated as a breath of fresh air for the monarchy. That's survival. Most people would call that winning the lottery. Meghan's hands shake violently as she grips the arms of her chair, her knuckles white with tension. You don't understand the pressure, the constant scrutiny, the way they tried to silence me and make me disappear into the background. Disappear into the background. Jimmy leans forward, his eyes boring into hers with laser focus. Or did they ask you to do what every other royal has done for generations? Show up, smile, cut ribbons, and serve the people instead of serving yourself, because there's a difference between being silenced and being asked to stop making everything about you. The studio audience watches in horrified fascination as Meghan completely breaks down. Her sobs now audible throughout the venue. I gave up everything for that family. She chokes out between tears. My career, my independence, my friends, my life in America. I sacrificed everything and they never appreciated it. You gave up everything. Jimmy's voice rises with disbelief. You gave up a supporting role on a cable television show that most people had never heard of. You gave up a lifestyle blog that was generating modest income at best. He gave up being a relatively unknown actress to become one of the most famous women in the world. That's not sacrifice, Meghan. That's the ultimate upgrade. Meghan's face contorts with pain and rage. Her careful media training completely abandoned as raw emotion takes over. You're being cruel, she sobs. You're being deliberately cruel and you know it. I'm being honest, Jimmy replies coldly. Something you might want to try sometime, because here's what really happened, isn't it? You thought you could revolutionize the monarchy, Make it more modern, more American, more focused on celebrity culture. When that didn't work, when they expected you to follow traditions that have existed for centuries, you decided to burn it all down rather than admit you were wrong. The accusation lands like a physical blow. Meghan doubles over in her chair, her shoulders heaving with uncontrolled sobs. I tried to fit in, she wails. I tried so hard to make them love me. No, you didn't, Jimmy says with devastating certainty. You tried to make them change for you. You wanted them to love the version of the monarchy that existed in your head, not the actual institution that billions of people around the world respect and admire. And when reality didn't match your fantasy, you decided to take revenge. Meghan looks up at him through her tears, her face a mask of devastation and defeat. That's not true, isn't it? Jimmy presses relentlessly. Every interview you've given, every statement you've made, every project you've launched since leaving has been designed to diminish the royal family's reputation while elevating your own. You've turned your marriage into a weapon against the very institution that gave you everything you have today. The truth of his words seems to hit Meghan like a tidal wave. She covers her face with her hands, her whole body shaking as she weeps openly on national television. I never meant for it to go this far, she whispers through her fingers. I just wanted them to understand how much they hurt me. So, you decided to hurt them back, Jimmy concludes, his voice now carrying a note of something almost like pity. You decided that if you couldn't be the princess you wanted to be, you'd make sure nobody could ignore the pain you felt, even if it meant destroying relationships, dividing families, and damaging an institution that serves millions of people around the world. Meghan removes her hands from her face, revealing mascara streaks and red swollen eyes. When she speaks, her voice is barely audible. I loved Harry. I still love Harry. I never wanted to hurt him. But you did hurt him, Jimmy says quietly. You took a man who was finally finding his place in the world, who was honoring his mother's memory through his charitable work, who was beloved by his people, and you convinced him to walk away from everything that made him who he was. You isolated him from his family, his friends, his country, his purpose. You turned him into a supporting character in your revenge story. The final blow lands with devastating precision. Meghan collapses completely, her head falling forward as she sobs uncontrollably, all pretense of dignity abandoned. I thought I was saving him, she gasps between sobs. I thought I was protecting him from the same system that killed his mother. You weren't protecting him, Jimmy says with finality. You were using his trauma to justify your own ambitions. You weaponized his grief to get what you wanted. And now look where you both are. Isolated in California, burning bridges faster than you can build them, turning your private pain into public entertainment for profit. The studio falls into complete silence, except for the sound of Meghan's broken sobs. The audience stares in stunned disbelief at what they've just witnessed, the complete and total destruction of one of the world's most carefully crafted public personas. Jimmy looks directly into the camera, his expression serious and unflinching. And gentlemen, that's what happens when somebody finally asks the questions we've all been thinking. That's what happens when the carefully constructed narrative meets uncomfortable reality. He turns back to Meghan, who remains collapsed in her chair, still crying. I hope you find the peace you're looking for, Meghan. I really do, but you're never going to find it by blaming everyone else for your choices. As the camera pulls back for a wide shot, viewers can see the full scope of what they've just witnessed. The complete breakdown of someone who built her entire public identity on being untouchable, on being the perpetual victim who could never be held accountable for her actions. This has been television history in the making, folks. The night Jimmy Kimmel asked the questions nobody else dared to ask and got the answers nobody was prepared to hear. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and comment below with your thoughts on this explosive confrontation. What do you think? Was Jimmy too harsh?